We're rolling into week 3. Some of you guys are hurting at the running back position, and you want to strategize for the future. You want to look at other rosters. You want to find guys to trade for, or maybe even pick somebody off waivers that could help you down the line. Not right now, but in the future. And sometimes you got to look at injured players. But a guy we talked about that we did a deep dive a few weeks ago prior to the start of the season was Jonathon Brooks. We said to stash him on IR, stash him as long as possible, but now things are getting dicey. We got running backs getting hurt, we got wide receivers getting hurt. It's hard to stash players. He's in a predicament where not everybody can stash him on the IR, so he might be sitting there on waivers. So we got to sound the alarm on him, do a deep dive, so you realize what kind of talent we're looking at, what kind of upside you might be getting in the middle of the season that could help your fantasy football team. We're going to do that right now. But before we do that, you need to click that subscribe button right now because we're doing these deep dives every day. We're trying to find a few players every day. We're doing a deep dive. Usually they're trending players off the waiver wire. Also players that I'm seeing in the future that we can strategize around, that you need to look at least, so you can make the best decisions for your fantasy team. Click that button. Stop missing out. But Jonathon Brooks here. He's on the PUP. He ain't going to be back for a few weeks. Maybe middle of the season. Maybe back into the season. Should be back sometime this year. And he is a very fascinating prospect. Looked good right before the ACL tear in college. One of the best running backs in the nation. And you're looking at the Panthers here. And they are a complete mess. And the game scripts have been a complete mess. They've only scored 17 points on the season. Did not score a touchdown last week. Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders been splitting the workload. Chuba had more workload last week in week 2. But ain't been looking good, because they ain't been scoring points. The game script hasn't been rolling their way. They've been playing from behind. So it's really hard to get evaluation on the backfield. But when you look at Jonathon Brooks, coming out of high school, 4-star prospect, ranked 25th in his class for 24/7 Sports, already had the size coming up, had 7 offers per 24/7 Sports, but I guarantee he had more. But in 2020, he rushed for 3,800 yards, and he had 70 total touchdowns. The production metrics for a high schooler going to the collegiate level is very important, because if you're massively productive in high school to the point that you're posting video game stats, not all prospects do that, because we cover these high school prospects in the off season. That is a big indicator that player can transcend forward to the college level and possibly even more. We're already seeing that in the high school ranks. And then at Texas, we had to sit a little bit. It's not like we were a top guy in our class. Also, there's this guy named Bijan Robinson taking care of the workload, getting all the opportunities. But when Bijan Robinson leaves, he steps in and technically produces Bijan Robinson numbers. He's good in the passing game. He's explosive. He's creating a lot of missed tackles. 63 missed tackles in 11 games, 3.91 yards after contact per attempt. He's good in the open field. He's good all over the place. You can line him up in the slot. He's got the size to pound up between the tackles. And he was one of the most productive running backs in all of college football. And he was a blessing to watch last year. And then looking at some things, wow, he was playing one of the best running backs in missed tackles at that time in October. 58 missed tackles forced, one of the tops in the leading all Power 5 running backs. 108 carries, 726 rushing yards, 6.7 yards per carry, October 18th. Also 460 yards after contact, 4th among Power 5 running backs. 120.5 rushing yards per game, 2nd among Power 5 running backs. He was getting it done. One of the top running backs in college football last year. You got the size, you got the burst, you got the wiggle, you got the speed. He has everything. The Carolina Panthers saw that. It may not have been the best decision for them, but they said, hey, we got to get this guy in the 2nd round. They looked at the running backs that they had, and they said, we got to get an upgrade for Bryce Young, because he needs upgrades around him, obviously, from what we saw. So they picked up Jonathon Brooks, knowing that it's going to be some time before they get to see him on the field. And now we're waiting, and we're getting closer to that time. He got drafted in the 2nd round. Usually running backs, when they get drafted that high, they get every opportunity to prove themselves, fail, succeed, whatever. But when you get that draft capital stamped to your name, you're going to be getting some opportunities sooner than later. And when you look at this backfield, you got Chuba and Miles Sanders. After that, there's really not much over there. And we're looking at Chuba Hubbard here. Not the greatest, but the game scripts weren't that great. But you're also looking at Miles Sanders. And you can really just say both these two running backs are just having a mid-off behind a mid-off offensive line in a really shitty offense. And then you're looking at what Chuba did last year, because people want to point out that he played well. He was well in fantasy. He did well in fantasy, but he was also having a mid-off last year. Wasn't the most efficient running back, but he was getting a lot of volume. That volume could go to Jonathon Brooks down the line. But we got Andy Dalton and Bryce Young. And with Andy Dalton right here, you're not very excited. You're not very excited about this. He's probably going to dink and dunk. This is going to be a slow-paced offense, but there's probably going to be some checkdowns to the running back, and Jonathon Brooks is going to have that juice in the open field to be able to do so. And you're looking at the Carolina Panthers' pace of play here. And for them playing from behind, they're not getting a lot of plays ran, mainly because there's a lot of 3-and-outs and turnovers going on there. So they're not really getting enough plays to really show off what they can do on offense, which really hasn't been much. But also 64% of their plays have been passing. They've been playing from behind, so they got to throw the ball more. They're only averaging 20 rushing attempts per game. That being said, we got to see better game scripts, see what this team really wants to do. They only have 13 plays on the season in a neutral game script. Only 13 plays. In 2 games, just 13. That's horrible. The Saints have 14 though, but it's better context. A lot better context. On top of that, the next team is at 40. The next lowest team. That's a good indicator that the Panthers are bad. Panthers are bad. But you don't need him because you can't stash him on IR. You do not have room. You want him, but you can't do it. He is a stash play. This team's so bad that they could make him suck for fantasy. He could be really good on the field, but he could still suck for fantasy due to this team. But he is an ultimate supreme stash play because you can stash him on IR. He's probably going to come back mid-season, late season, somewhere down the line. Maybe October, maybe November, maybe in a few weeks once he's done with the pup. He's going to come back sooner than later. They're going to see what they got in him. They might be so far down the line that they don't decide to use him. I don't see that happening. I see Canales pulling strings, trying to get things revamped in this offense, trying to see if they can get any sign of life here. They already benched Bryce Young. They're there to make changes. Let's see what can happen with Jonathon Brooks. But he's got a ton of upside. He's probably going to get a lot of work in the passing game due to them being in bad game scripts, playing from behind a lot. So he's going to get a lot of checkdowns. He's very explosive in open space. Probably will be sharing the backfield a lot starting off. But once he breaks off a couple runs, they're going to have to use him. And Jonathon Brooks will create missed tackles, will be awesome in the open field, very explosive, creating yards after contact. He's going to be very fun to watch. But right now, he's a great stash for the IR spot. Maybe at the end of your bench if you can, more in deeper leagues. But still, Brooks should be rostered in every league. And if he's sitting there on IR, you could always kick the tires and send over a couple players that's somewhat productive that you don't really need to try and get him back at you. It might be a little bit of a hit to you, but again, you can always play with the waiver wire as well. That'll give you a little bit more ammo to shoot for that upside once the waiver wire class is hit. And plus, the waiver wire has not been great lately, so there's going to be some premium players come up once we get more injuries. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. Thanks for watching. Catch you on the next video.